From the high mountains of the great Southwest Canadian Rockies, I bid you all good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever the case may be, wherever you are in this world, of which is covered by this radio program. Welcome to Dark Matter Radio. My name is Ronnie McLean, and we're going to have a very interesting program already, I can tell. We're going to dive deep into the infinite universe and all its possibilities. So hold on tight, grab a cup of coffee, some tea, whatever tobacco products you might be smoking, and settle in for a very, very interesting program. Yes, good evening, good evening, good evening. For far too long, we've looked at other people's work other than ourselves to interpret the paradigm upon which we need to look at who we are as beings of people. We've always looked towards a Asian or Indian or a Eurocentric type way of looking at things, even an African type way of things, right? And we also looked at the Native Americans, and we really didn't, amongst ourselves as quote-unquote indigenous people, quote-unquote aboriginal people, whatever, but really take a look at this for ourselves and interpret the information the way that it really needs to be interpreted and looked at it in a different way. Well, here tonight you're going to get that from excerpt out of my book, Counterfeit Spirits That Walk Among Us. We're going to find that our fixed notions of what we have for ourselves and the words that we call ourselves are part of a plot, basically, to program us to become something that we aren't. So some of the words that you're going to be hearing, like Sophia and some of the names of the eons or the archons, these are more like vibrational frequencies that have been created and that are doing other creations. So I need you to understand that when we take a look at this is not a matter of black or white. This is not a matter of any of this kind of thing they call race. It's a matter of us being souls, non-souls, all types of other entities about where we come from. So let's start this off because this is another part of the counterfeit spirits that walk among us in the beginning. Start off by saying, Great Grand Rising to us all. Great Grand Rising to us all. This show you're about to hear is in conjunction with the counterfeit spirit that walk among us. Those that were created, those that were able to unleash and tap in to a low-dimensional dark force that made it its promise to destroy every living thing on the planet, take control and assume their places as gods, false light beings with souls. I want to get this straight. We are Americus Indians, Americus Empire, Americus Indians. And we cannot, for any reason whatsoever, concede our true identity as Indians, indigo people, people that have God within, people that have the light within, with a burning soul, unlike any other creature, possibly on this earth and in this universe. Understand? By agreeing that we are called these corporate names, and anyone that falls into this, for us, they are guilty of treason of all our people and are guilty of genocide. We are the people of this land. We are born. We are not. Never are, never were, never will be Aboriginals, First Nations, Natives, Métis, and any other made-up words. These are words to distract you from the truth of who you are. They are using these descriptions to get to their final solution. By us agreeing to these words, these made-up words, we are agreeing to the killing of ourselves and killing ourselves off by agreeing to be called anything but what you are, an Americus Indian. Understand that in 1850, a corporate legislation stated that they are working on the final solution by killing us off, by using a word change. If we agree to kill ourselves off, remember, these names will do just that. We are Indians of the Americas, of the Americus Empire, on what we used to call Turtle Island, now called North America. No, we were never Aboriginals, First Nations, Natives, Métis. These are words to have us agree to help the corporations work with them to kill ourselves off. As we wake up to these made-up words to trick you and to lure you down into the abyss with a low-dimensional entity that was created, and they had their friends brought up from the abyss to destroy the creation of light. And the creation of light is who and what you are. You are the Americus Indians of the Americus Empire. There's another thing that I want to try to get straight as well, and that is the further defining of who we are as beings of people on this planet. We are the Americus Indians, which in the UN states that we are the oldest group of people on the planet. It needs to be recognized that way. We are of the Wichita Indians. Wichita, or Wichita, right? Mur. M-U-U-R. So we want to clear up some of these misconceptions of these words and where some people are trying to take us. Because we have to be careful of the hijack, as they say. We have to dodge the hijack. Because the Mur is the ancient of all ancients, named for the original people of the earth, based on ancient teachings from the American Indian people of the Wichita, or Wichita River Valley and its tributaries. Our ancestors teach us that the Mu, M-U, M-U-U, is pronounced Mu, and some even bring it all the way as far back as Atlantis, and Lemuria is the indigenous name of this land. Mu, M-U-U. This is what the Wichita teaches. Mu is all matter, material, purpose, divine, of the universal consciousness living on this earth. Now understand, a Mu is who you are, Wichita, an American Indian of the Americus Empire. But the etymology of the word Mu, what does it mean? Mu la Mure was the land of the Murian people. The Murian people, Mu, American Indians, Americus Empire, and are the indigenous peoples of this land. There is no government or society that predates where you come from on the planet. We are the first. We populated the entire planet, and through us came all other things. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, that we are noted in the UN as some of the oldest people on the planet. And this goes into understanding why they want to change your name, why they want to change your designation, why they want to change who and what you are. So you can study all the history, but they will never tell you about the truth about who you are and the light being within you, about the burning star called the soul that ignites inside you every single day. They never want you to be able to wake up. But unfortunately for them, the time of their rule is coming to an end. The counterfeit spirits that walk among us is now being subdued by something that they cannot control, and they know this. And this is what you call the carbon-12 to carbon-7 transformation. This is one of the reasons why they were afraid of that word Aquarius, because it brought in the new age, and the old age is now gone. A new energy is now upon the earth. A new awakening is happening. The human residents of the planet, it's changing. resonating higher than it has ever before. A normal human resonance, which is the resonance upon which the earth vibrates at. And all living things vibrate with it. As the earth now no longer vibrates at 7.8, but anywhere from 25 to up to 500 megahertz, we are changing back into who we naturally are. Whether you like it or not, no matter what you call yourself, if you allow yourself to be awakened, you will begin to start recognizing deep within yourself the light being with a soul that is waking up, telling you that you are different, that you are powerful, that you are a creator, and that you are attached to the light. So this is one of the things that I really wanted to get through in the beginning of this, as we begin to start looking much deeper into the origins of who and what we are. It is now time for us to open up the books, the tablets of old, and look into the deep truth of the counterfeit spirits that walk among us. Great Grand Rising to us all, some 445,000 years ago. As is written in some of the tablets, from what they call those who came from the stars, those who came from the sky, those who are not from this earth, those who came from another planet, in search of something for their planet to be able to restore the atmosphere upon which was having much trouble. As they splashed down on this beautiful place, as they seen cold earth, the seas, they waded ashore and established a ridu, a home and a faraway place. In the time, initial settlement expanded to a full-fledged mission on our planet, with a mission control center, a spaceport, mining operations, and even a way station on Mars. Many people don't realize, but many of the things that they witness on Mars are ruins. There was a great civilization on Mars, and they were destroyed, killed off by war, as they were short of manpower. These faraway astronauts, created on another planet, employed genetic engineering to fashion primitive workers. We call them Homo sapiens. The deluge that catastrophically swept over the earth required a fresh start. The astronauts became gods, granting mankind civilizations, those who they created, teaching and worship of them, of their created beings who bow down and call them gods. Now we have to understand, then, about 400,000 years ago, possibly even more, all that had been achieved unraveled in a nuclear calamity brought about by the visitors, these entities, to the earth in the course of their own rivalries and wars. You see, what had taken place on earth, and especially the events since human history began, and that's very important when we talk about since human history began, because human history isn't exactly what you think it is and who it actually started with. And what I have to say is that history is not what you think history is. You see, this history has been chronicled in this Earth series, I can say, called the Bible, many clay tablets, the Mahabharata, the Torah, the Quran, ancient myths, archaeological discoveries. But what had been predicted, the events on this earth, what had taken place on the astronauts' own planets. And I guess you can't call them astronauts if they were coming from their planet. Well, that planet was called Naebru, that caused the space journeys, their need for gold, and the creation of what you now call man. Now, understanding that creation of man is very, very important, because the creation of man started with the clay of this earth. And in the Bible, it explains that they said they were going to make man in their own image, in the image of what many people say gods. What I'm learning is that they made what they called so-called man in the image of the mu, of the image of the indigo beings that were already here on the planet. Taking essence from themselves, called the Anunnaki, and also going into what they call Enki's garden. Wasn't Eden yet, but Enki's garden was more of all the animals that they found and caught on the planet that they never seen before. And through genetic manipulation of about sevenfold, they created the first, what they call black-headed one. And the rest of the story, from that point forward, would become history in terms of a new created being formed on this earth. The black-headed ones. Who are these black-headed ones? Who are they now? And what have they done since the time of their creation? And who were they actually worshiping? Well, they were worshiping those that created them. Those are the ones that they created and called God. So the black-headed ones, the first creations from the Anunnaki, taking the essence of the original beings on this planet, going against universal law, which they knew that they went against, created these beings anyway. They created these beings. First, they were like woods. They were things that walked around without anything inside of them. They had no or little intelligence. In fact, a lot of it, when they were trying to build them, they were trying not to violate the universal laws of creation. So they were trying to create something that had enough intelligence to do what they wanted them to do, but not be a true living entity with spiritual energy or even a soul, no less a light being. And as they were fashioning these created ones, they were finding that they needed more intelligence in them. They needed more of an ability for them to be able to act on their own. So what they were creating were biologic drones, biological androids. is what they were trying to create. Something that they didn't have to really care for and didn't matter if it was destroyed. And in today's society, as we find out, as we see, there's a lot of that same attitude still happening today on the planet. Remember, the entities that created the black-headed ones aren't from this planet, so they don't have any real love for this planet. And the ones that were created on this planet are not actually of this planet, so they too don't really have any love for the planet as well. But the Lemurians, Atlanteans, the Atlanteans came a little bit later. The Lemurians, Mu, what you would call Wichita, were the original beings on the planet and caretakers of the planet. And they had a creation that was inside of them that was learning how to grow as a light being with a soul in them. These were gifts that were given to what you call the Wichita people, the Mu, the original people of the planet. These are the original Indians, Indigo people, or what you would now call American Indians. Not Native Americans, not Métis, not First Nations, or any of the other names that they switched out and gave to the original people of what was Atlantis, of those that were from Lemuria that were called Mu, that are now recognized as Wichita American Indians. So when you take a look at this, as they were creating these people, as they were creating these new beings, these creations, it took several different types of steps, which in a later event I will get more in detail with that. But in these steps, it went from not being able to function on their own to being able to function on their own. And then because they had surrogates, the Anunnaki, had surrogates that were birthing these created ones, stated that they needed to be able to procreate on their own. And this is where it got really, really serious. So what they did was they took the essence of themselves and instilled it into the black-headed ones in order for them to be able to procreate. This was a direct violation of universal law. And they did suffer the consequences for it, the Anunnaki, in terms of them having to leave this planet. And we'll get into more detail in another story about that one as well. So this is the basics of what you really need to know about what's going on. And these black-headed ones, as we begin to start looking at them, the terminology that comes up with it is you have Nazi, root, Nazi in the root people, or the original creations on the planet. The root identified themselves as the Kemites. Nazis were more of an offshoot of them, and this is where we get the two distinctions of people that began to start sharing space along with their gods who walked among them, the Anunnaki. So when you take a look at this, it starts to get really serious, because you begin to start understanding that that everything on the planet is not the same. And there's another one where you have to dodge the hijack, because we all are not the same. We all are not the same on the planet. We all are not made of the same interior with the selenium melanin or sulfur melanin, those who have just spirits and those who have light beings with souls. So as it was described, these beings that were created didn't have any souls, didn't have a light being within. And that being said, they began to take on the characteristics of those who created them, Now, there's a lot of things that are involved in this as we're opening up this whole entire can of worms, because we're now beginning to start getting very specific as to who these people are, where they came from, and who's involved. And there's a lot to be involved, because it gets into a lot of the things that the Gnostics talked about. And the Gnostics talked about a lot of things in the Gnostics' teachings, which is the teachings they tried to kill off from the hijacked Rome. The Gnostics were the last, how can I say, real educators of the Christos energy. And the hijacked Rome began to start killing them all off because they were changing them with Christianity. Now, just really quick, as I divert just for a little bit into the Gnostics text of creation, there we have a couple of people that you need to, or a couple of things that you need to be very aware of. And it is here that we must pause a minute. Because before we go any further, we need to know about our own existence, how we came to be. We have already learned about their history. Everything you've been taught is their history. The black-headed ones, the counterfeit spirits that walk among us, the root, the Nazi, the Tamahu, and the Hyksos. Everything that you learn from your Bible, from history, everything that you learn that comes from Egypt, anything that they named, anything that they put in their history books, it is their history. It is what they are from. It is their intentions to fulfill the promise of what their gods called the inheritors of the earth, the so-called meek ones. And this goes for all of the created ones on the planet. So we must learn about the Gnostic creation story. We must know and begin to start understanding our truth, who we are. From the Americus, Wichita, Moore, and any other names that they came up with to describe you, you have to understand that you are indigo being. You're an Indian. You are a light being with a soul within that is connected to the all. So one of the things that the Gnosticism's part of the other verities of early Christianity was its astonishing creation myth. They call it a myth. And of course they call it a myth because you have to understand who is reteaching you the information, because they killed off the original people that was explaining it to you. And an interpretation of the creation of Genesis that particularly turns that Old Testament text upside down. So you have to understand that they are talking about the first. They're talking about chaos period. They're talking about what happened before the chaos period. This is your natural history. This is of your roots. So some people find the Gnostic creation story to be merely bizarre. Others find it to be downright blasphemous. And how could they not? Others find it exhilarating and inspiring. lifting them up to highs like never seen before. So I just want you to give me a moment here. Just want you to give me a little bit of a moment here to be able to explain the Gnostics. Whatever your opinion is, I want you to be able to just listen to the words that I'm saying, listen to the historical, what they would call facts in the Gnostic sense of things, and how they looked at it, and what they were out there teaching the people, and what they actually got killed for, right? So when Jesus says, he sent his people out in twos, and he sent them out into the world to go teach, that's exactly what they were doing, and they ended up getting killed off for that. They were the last people from the original, what you call Chemites, that were out there trying to teach everyone else what was really happening, right? Because a lot of these things were being lost because of all the things that had happened on the planet at that particular time and before then. So I know there's a lot of people who are out there who are Christians, who don't want to be in Christianity. Maybe they're Muslims, maybe they're Moors, maybe they're Hebrew Israelites, whatever background you come from. You have to take a listen to this, because all the information that those religions have received, they all got them from a single source. And the single source that they got that from was where the Gnostics got their information from which everything else stems. Right? So, when you read The Secret Truth, that book, they explain that a lot of the history that was given to the people was partial, ununderstood events that they were still trying to figure out themselves when they were creating all of this stuff. So, but whatever your opinion of the Gnostics and the creation story ends up being, if you want to understand it in terms, understand it in its own terms, it's necessary to be able to at least temporarily see it as the Gnostics themselves saw it, and were teaching it from the ancient tablets of history. Right? Remember, the information where they got this stuff from was in Alexandria. That burned down 3 times. Right? Leaving us only with these partial tablets, which I still believe that they have a lot of the information in the Catholic Church themselves. Right? The Jesuits and whoever else. So this is a serious thing. So how the Gnostics saw it as the story that articulates and quite possibly even attempts to explain the human condition, and it doesn't even attempt to. This goes into what the human condition is and why they don't want you to know the truth. Because if you know who you are, then you know exactly how powerful you are. Why the world we live in is so full of senseless suffering. What can we do to overcome it? The absurdity, the misery, and put ourselves into a meaningful state of usefulness. And as I told people, once you understand this, the only thing you have to do is open the door and walk out. So the Gnostic creation myth, or the Gnostic creation story, or the Gnostic creation history has come down to us in numerous forms, different versions, and different Gnostic texts. It's apparent that there was never a single uniform version of the story, which I disbelieve, because I do believe that there was a single form of the story. But what happened is as they were being killed off, broken up, what they did with the story was they changed it from time to time, so then that way they would be able to live a little bit longer to be able to spread the truth. So these versions are all coming from the same truth, the same text. They're just explained in different ways because they were sent out in different parts of the world, and then those different parts of the world also interpreted it in the language that they were given it in. Right? Because there's all different types of languages all over the earth. So we must remember that, right? As an underlying basis when they begin to start trying to explain what is going on with our history. And this is the reason why it was able to survive for as long as it did, that I'm able to now be able to tell you this story in its true terms. So, to briefly summarize the underlying model, Father the God, the creation of all, who gave rise to a host of spiritual beings, eons, who populated the heavens, which the Gnostics called the Polemra, spiritual beings. Right? The spiritual beings were eons. They populated the heavens, which was actually called Pleroma, Pleroma, fullness, including a divine mother and Christ. One of the last of these beings to be emulated from the Father is Sophia. Sophia is going to be a very important part of the story. She gave birth to a new being on her own without the involvement of the partner or approval of the father. The being born under such circumstances was nothing like the perfect inhabitants of Pleroma. Instead, he was ignorant and malevolent. This was the demiurge. And you hear a lot of people now saying demiurge a lot, right? The craftsman, right? Whom the Gnostics identified with the God of the Old Testament. Now you're beginning to understand why they tried to kill them all out, because the demiurge was identified, right? The demiurge was identified as an ignorant and malevolent demiurge craftsman, who the Gnostics identified with the God of the Old Testament. He created the material world to mirror his own wicked personality and trap sparks of divine fragments of Pleoria within humans, right? Within humans. It was then up to Christ to awaken humans to their true nature and liberate them from that construct of the world he created. So the retelling below's it follows what I'm getting ready to explain to you. I'm having a hard time explaining because there's so much going on in here. But the retelling of this also goes in line with the secret book of John, right? The secret book of John, which is quite representative of the perspective of the classic Gnostic school of thought, right? So you have to understand that this was an academy. This was huge. This was a worldwide teaching. The creation stories of the Valminists and other early Christian sects or schools that can be considered Gnostic still adhere to the same basic model throughout many of the details that we hear in this story. In the beginning, there was only one, the Father, who is the Father of the surrounding by luminous spiritual water. He gazed into the water and saw his reflection. His reflection became Barbilo, the mother his female counterpart. But Belo was also called Prenoria, forethought, because she was the first thought of the father. Belial asked the father let me say that again. Belial asked for the father to grant her foreknowledge, incorruptibility, life eternal, and truth. The father granted her that request. Foreknowledge, incorruptibility, life eternal, and truth came into being, glorified their father and mother. The father gazed into Bolero, and she conceived by him. She gave birth to a spark. And the spark becomes very important as well. Of light similar to the Father's light. That's powerful. This was the Son, who is also called androgynous. What to androgynous? Self-generating. Since he was at the bottom identical with the Father, he was further called Christ, and the name greater than every name. Now in the Bible we hear that Christ's name is greater than any other name and above all the angels. This is where that comes from, right? The Father anointed the Son with his goodness, which possessed his perfect goodness into his Son. The Son glorified his father and mother. Just as Bolero had asked the one to give her new eons, new spiritual beings, new children, whatever you want to call it, the Son asked to be given another. Mine, the father and mother agreed. Mine arose and glorified its father and mother. Mine wanted to bring something else into being through the Father's word. Will was born, followed by the word. The Father made the Son the master of all powers and truth. From the Son came the four luminaries: Hormazel, Oriel, Davidthani, and Eliath. Each came into being with 3 additional eons, along with its own. The 3 eons which Hormazel were grace, truth, and form. The 3 with Oriel were insight, perception, and memory. The 3 with Devavanti were understanding, love, and idea. The 3 with Eleth was perfection, peace, and Sophia, wisdom. Now I just want to pause here for a second, because when you read a lot of the text, the Kemite text, and the text from Thoth to Huti, you begin to start understanding that there's so many different levels that break down in levels, and a lot of them go from 3, 6 to 9, and then even into 12. So it gets very deep when you really get into the real essence of everything that's being taught about. And this is the reason why, they call these things esoteric, because they want to keep the real hidden meaning with all the stuff from you. So to move on, next was the perfect human. Demas. Adam, the stranger, holy Adam, or old Adam, who came into being and glorified by the Father. Now, everything was glorified by the Father. If you notice that, everything has the light with it. So when they say the Father, they're talking about the all-encompassing light, the light upon which everything else stems from. So if you have a light bulb, the light bulb emulates light, all those light particles are from the light bulb, right? So this is what they are. All of them have the blessing of the light. They never went out of the light. They never went out of themselves, out of what created them, out of what they created with, because they're all the same, and created anything else, right? So Adam was also perfect, right? Who came into being and glorified by the light, by the Father, by the light of all, right? These are well beyond gods. These aren't gods yet, right? These aren't gods. These are entities well beyond what you can ever even imagine. This is the creation of all things, of all light. He was placed in the eon of Hazamel, or family. Adam had a son, Seth, who was placed in the eon of Oriel. He was set to preside over the souls of the saints, those with Gnostics, in the eon of divination. The souls of those who were not saints, but who nevertheless repented, eventually were given a place of their own in the eon of Illith. Now, that's very important, because anything that doesn't have a soul and who were not considered to be saints, light beings, but who were nevertheless repented, eventually were given a place of their own, and that was under the auspices of the family of Elith, right? So now you have to understand that there's a difference between beings. There are light beings with souls, and then there are those without, just energy, just spirit. We'll come into that. So Sophia watched these marvels, radiant beings all around her, radiant beings, these light beings with souls, right? Or beings that had spiritual energy that was doing everything they can to try to radiate like souls, right? So, but remember, even though these entities, these beings were being created without souls, they had the blessing of the universal consciousness. He had the blessing of the Father. So they did not go against universal law. They stayed within the creation law, everything coming from the light, or being blessed of the light, right? So, and this is the reason why we have to be careful of our thought forwards, because again, you'll see how powerful we are as creators. So Sophia watched these marvels, radiant beings all around her. A desire to give birth to an eon of her own arose within her, but she acted on these desires impatiently and impulsively. She did not bother to involve her divine partner, nor to obtain the consent of the Father. So she was going outside of what you call the legal universal concept of creation. She went on this on her own, and let's see what happened. Since she had decadence from the Father, she was full of tremendous power, right? So she had the original. So since she was a descendant from the Father, she was of the original light, right? So she was filled with tremendous power. She was able to birth a new being that contained some of her divine essence, but not all, because this new entity had been conceived by Sophia alone. It did not resemble the other immortals. Instead, it was hideous and misshapen. It was like a snake with a lion's head. Its eyes burned like lightning. Now again, this new entity that she created was misshapen, misformed, and hideous, right? So in fear and shame, Sophia cast her son out of the divine realm, the Plumoria, fullness, in the hopes that none of the other inhabitants of the perfect place would see him. To conceal him further, she would envelop him in a shiny cloud and placed him on a throne in the middle of it. She named him Yaldabaoth. Yaldabaoth. Now, Yaldabaoth is a term that you're beginning to start hearing a lot more now. So now you know who Yaldabaoth is. Yaldabaoth was the entity that was created by the female divine entity that is connected directly to the light with all the powers of creation. And because she went out of the divine creation realm and she went out of the divine creation law, this is what happened. Yaldabaoth took place, right? And what does Yaldabaoth mean? Child of chaos. So this is the chaos realm. This is the chaos time that we always talk about. We are children of chaos, right? And he has since also been called Shakala, fool, and Samuel, blind god. Yaldabaoth mated with the mindless in him, right? He mated with the mindless in him and generated 12 archons. Now, we'll see how this spirals. Demonic beings who would shortly come to rule the earth from the celestial spheres above. Othon, Hermes, Calitha, Umbria, Yabel, Adoniso, Sabath, Cain, Abel. A lot of these names start sounding familiar. Abrasens, Yobel, and Marthapeel, Melachah, Adamanan, and Balis. Because Yaldabaoth's foolishness, he was wicked and ignorant of his own ancestry. So Yaldabaoth didn't know where he came from. And the reason why he didn't really know where he came from is because he was hidden, right? He was hidden, and he was being hidden from the other Eternals, so that Sophia, who was part of that original light, wouldn't be noticed in this horrible creation she came up with on her own, by going outside of the universal consciousness and the universal law, right? So what Yaldabaoth did, he had a model of Plemeroth within him, right? So he didn't know of this other heavenly realm. He didn't know of this other heavenly realm, Pleroma. He didn't know about it, but because he was created from there, he had it within him. So he had a model in his mind of what to create. So he created a material world based on that model of Pleroma. But because of his ignorance and depravity, it came out all wrong. It was a corrupted and far inferior place of the divine model. So now you can see what we're living in. We're living in kind of a corrupt, horrendous, never was supposed to be model of the original heavenly realms. So we're below the heavenly realms. Right? He created this thing, this divine area, his divine area, that was all just craziness. Right? It just came out all wrong. So, Sophia watched all of this and was stricken with distress and guilt. She wept and repented for giving birth to such a monstrosity entity. Now remember, this monstrosity entity is the entity that is defined the God of the Christian Holy Bible. The God of the Christian Holy Bible is Yaldabaoth. Keep that in mind. So as Sophia watched all the happenings that was going on, she was stricken with distress and guilt. She apparently wept and repented for giving birth to such a monstrosity entity. The Father, the all-encompassing light, the light of all power, the light of all creation, full of perfect love, heard her pleas and promised to forgive her and restore her to her former stature. So she was reformatted because she did what they called repent. But first she had to stay in the ninth heaven, the layer of the sky closest to Plemoria above Yaldabaoth, and the 7 archon populated heavens below him. So let us get it straight. So what happened is that Plemoria, which is the heaven where she is, there's another heaven above her where it goes out of the realm that we are currently in into a whole nother realm of existence where the all-encompassing light called the Father exists. And if you exist of the all-encompassing light in this realm, you are part of the Father and share all the power of the Father, right? Or share a great deal of that, that creation part of the Father. You have power. So Yaldabaoth is below the heaven of his mother, of his creator, the mother, Sophia, which is in Plemoria, which is in that heaven. And then there were 7 other layers, or 12 other layers, that was created by Yaldabaoth, right? The 7 Archon populated heavens below him. So now you have things below him until she was until she atoned for her sins, for her deficiencies. In other words, she had to kind of fix what was going on. She had to try to make something right and all of this wrong. So she had to make another perfection, right? She had to make a perfection that was based on the blessings of the Father. Meanwhile, Yaldabaoth and his archons saw an image of the heavenly Adam from the Father's pristine realm. Now, that Adam is different from the Adam in the Bible. It's another creation. That is not the creation of the Adam on the heavenly earth, right? Not the first creation anyway. So think about this now. They didn't know where it came from, but they were enthralled by it. They decided to attempt to create another human being for themselves. But at first, their creation lay lifeless on the ground. They couldn't figure out how to animate it. Think about that. How to animate it, right? Now, animation only means how to give it a spirit, how to give it life, how to give it spirit. As they stood around, immobile, body puzzled over what to do, the gracious beings of the Plemoria came up with a plan to help the part of Sophia that had become trapped in Yaldabaoth return to her so that she could return to Plemoria. Now, think about this. A part of her light was trapped in darkness. A part of her light was trapped in evilness. A part of her light was trapped somewhere where it didn't belong. And until she was able to retrieve that light and make it right, until she was able to get that light out of that darkness, she wasn't able to be redeemed until that was done. That darkness was in Yaldabaoth, the things that he had created. But part of her, the reason why he was able to create was because part of her essence, not all of it, but part of her essence was in Yaldabaoth, which gave him the ability to be able to create. This is part of the chaos period, right? All this creation that was going on wasn't really meant to be. So what happened with some of the emissaries, they were watching everything as well, and to help her out, they came up with a plan to be able to get her essence out of what it is identified as the God of the Christian Bible. To get that creation essence out of him, to get that light out of him and put it into something else. So then that something else can become the righteous and be the master of what all he had created. So emissaries from Plemoria appeared to Yaldabaoth and advised him to breathe his spirit into Adam's face. Right? So this is the Adam that he created. Right? He had seen the real Adam, the blueprint of the heavenly Adam, and he wanted to create it like he created his realm based on Plemoria, based on the upper heavens. So with this Adam that had no life in him, the emissaries said for him to breathe his spirit into Adam's face. His spirit, that soul, that creation, along with that, right? Because he didn't really know what he was really doing. What he did, he not only breathed the spirit in there, he did something that was tremendously unbelievable. After which, they assured him the body would awaken and stand up. Yaldabaoth did so, and Sophia's powers flooded out of him into Adam, bringing the first man to life, physical life. Because of Sophia's power within him, the life Adam now, the life Adam is now the first creation that is of the earth. The first creation that is of the earth, that is of life, that has a physical being, a physical biological unit on him, right? Because of Sophia's power within this physical being, he was already wiser, more spiritual, and more intellectual than his creators. I want that to sink in for a little bit. So what Yaldabaoth did, he breathed out of him the essence of the light, the essence of Sophia, and breathed it into the physical man of Adam, giving him the light being with the soul, making him part of the Father, making him part of the all-encompassing light, making this being of the all, which is just crazy. And this begins the whole jealousy thing, because out of that jealousy and resentment, the archons made of Adam the mortal. So this is the reason why you are hated. You're hated because of what is in you. They placed him in the Garden of Eden, which they filled with all kinds of superfluous or stupendous types of foods, and making him attached to material pleasures and distracting him from his true divine nature. The archons wanted to possess Adam, divine's insight, for themselves. So they took it out of Adam and created new beings to house it. And they call that Eve. When Adam saw her, he instantly recognized her as a spiritual counterpart. At Christ's urging, Adam and Eve ate from the tree, the knowledge, Gnostic, and grew in their understanding of their superiority over their creators. So when you get into this, right, you have to think about now, this Yaldabaoth entity was now boiling with hatred and envy. And Yaldabaoth, in the Gnostics text, said he raped Eve and cast her and her mate out of the garden. The two sons were born from the tragic intercourse, Cain and Abel, also called Yahweh and Elohim, two names for God in the Old Testament. So when you get down to this, you have to understand that a lot of this is being explained by the Eurocentric mindset. So when they say that they raped Eve, my understanding from reading all of the text is that the raping took place when they allowed the Anunnaki to come down here and to take the essence from the original beings, female essence, and place it into their next creation of beings, the Tamu. And then the being after that, the Hyksos. And then the beings after that were created in India. And then the beings after that were created all over the lands, which some of them came into giants and all other types of manifestations. But these beings didn't have souls with light beings. These beings had spirits. Some of them didn't have spirits at all. Some of them were just created with nothing in order for them to be able to be possessed by the ones that Yaldabaoth created, the archons. So the archons are possessing people at birth, and they're switching people throughout the lifetime because they want to be able to experience what it's like being human. And then you begin to start understanding what happened when they began to start trying to immediately plant all type of food, all types of pleasures, and create an environment that was not natural to the actual development of the light being with the soul. So here now we have the very beginnings of what you can understand of who you are as a being of people. You can hear that because Yaldabaoth couldn't bear the fact that there was now beings in his creation who were enlightened and more superior to him. He couldn't understand that, right? And in the Gnostics text, they say three creations of beings. Our being, the original Adam of the flesh, that holds the light being soul, are the most powerful beings in our realm. So it is very important to understand that everything that's going on after that was to dethrone you or to destroy you, so that you will no longer be more powerful than him. Because at one point in time, because Yaldabaoth did not understand who he was, he said that he was the only one true God in this realm. He was the one and only true God in this realm. And some of his creations, namely one of his sons, understood that that wasn't true because there was something that was created before him, which was that spiritual Adam. And he seen that and knew that Yaldabaoth was a liar. Something was amiss. So now you begin to start having an understanding about why you, Indigo, Indian, Amarikus, Wichita, Mu, Moor, Lemurian people of Atlantis, people of the light within, a light being with a soul. Why these archons, these low-dimensional forces, were brought here, and why these other beings were created so that they can try to take the place of you, bring you down, prevent you from ascending. It's important that you understand the truth as to where we're going with all of this. And I think that's going to be it for now. I mean, it's a lot to digest, so you might have to listen to this a couple of times, but it's a lot to digest. But this is who you are, right? And I wanted to try to get into a little bit of this. And so the next one, and again, all of this is in the book, Counterfeit Spirits That Walk Among Us. The next time that I come out with another one of these, I'll get into i.n.n.a, and I'll get into who the Anunnaki are, not was, but are, because I believe that they are a creation of one of the archons. Well, not archons, one of the creations of what Yaldabaoth created underneath him. Yeah, archons, because there's 12 different levels of archons, and I believe that the Anunnaki was one of those creations. And again, everything is based on a melanin type basis until you get to, the Tamahu, right? And then the Hyksos, which are the last two creations to be made. So I want you to understand that if you're listening to this, don't care who you are, I want you to be able to search your being. Search your being. Understand. Come to an understanding of who you are. And within you should be nothing but love, goodness, caring, peacefulness, and power within you, because you are the creator. This system cannot exist without you. And that's why they say they're raping Eve. They're raping the mindset of the people in order for them to keep their power set intact. They're raping the people. They're raping the energy that's coming from you, taking it without you knowing it, taking it against your will. And some people are giving it freely. And those are the ones who are descending lower and lower dimensionally and vibrationally, because in the Gnostics it also says that if you vibrate with a thing, you can become that thing. So if you vibrate high, you could become as high as what is in you, which is all goodness. If you vibrate low, regardless of what is in you, you could be a light being with a soul, you can just be a spirit. If you vibrate below your original chakra points, anything below your waist, you can become part of that demiurge. You could be that Yaldabaoth energy, lower dimensional. And so that's why we have to be careful about the things that are going on within the presence of ourselves, what we watch on TV, the music that we listen to, all the commercials, the things that we gravitate towards. If you notice now, there's more things on TV now, and it's been graduating, getting higher and more about all the spiritual stuff, possessions, chasing of skinwalkers, all kinds of stuff on TV right now. I mean, it was, it started back there in the 70s with The Exorcist and stuff like that, and even a little before then. Frankenstein was actually a retelling of the creation of the Tamahu, right? We know that because of the references that were made in the book that come from Kemet and come from the creation itself. And we're going to get a lot more into that now, because now that you have this underneath your belt, you know exactly who you are and why the other things were created, right? So there's a lot more to the stories, a lot more that goes on. So I just wanted you to know this. There's much love out there. So love, it says, you have no choice but to love, right? To remember, a lot of times you can love something that might not want to be loved and could become their deficit, but it's through your love. Just give them all the love that you got, right? And keep creating, because the only thing that we need to do as beings of people is open up that door and take whoever wants to go out with us. You are free, autonomous being. You're part of the Father, part of the light. You're part of the creation. You're part of the all-encompassing light. You're part of what they call Sophia. And Sophia has given her light into you. Great Grand Rising. This is Dark Matter Radio with the series Counterfeit Spirits That Walk Among Us. Counterfeit Spirits That Walk Among Us. Have a great night.